Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is having a great day, as am I. I will be talking about the cost of public approval in Nosedive during my presentation. To start off, I would like to say, before researching Nosedive, I mainly saw the episode as, a warning about social media addiction and the pressure it is to gain validation from others. However, my scholarly sources help me understand the episode in a much better and much deeper way through concepts like surveillance culture, performative identity, and premeditated selfhood. These ideas help me realize that the characters are not just obsessed with ratings. They are constantly shaping and controlling their behavior because they know that they are always being watched and evaluated. With my thesis, I am mostly discussing that in this society, people begin treating themselves like public brands that must always appear socially acceptable or socially appealing. My thesis argues that Nosedive reveals how constant public evaluation pressures individuals to perform curated identities instead of behaving authentically and just being themselves. They have to put on the act compared to just wanting to be who they were born to be. Now, I'll be starting to talk about my first source. So, my source number one is going to be covering surveillance and public observation. The title of this source is Exploring the Use of Social Media by Scavency B. So, this is one of the first sources that changed my interpretation the most, because this research on social media validation and emotional dependence really just gave me a new insight on how I view my social media usage and how much I intake and my actions when I post or even just, scroll on social media. But this study argues that people who become emotionally attached to online approval begins shaping their behavior, mainly around the actions they expect from others. This idea helped me better understand the coffee shop scene in Nosedive. At first, the scene looks simple, plain, just, a woman going out to have coffee and eat. However, after doing this research, I realized that Lacey is performing even when no one is directly telling her what to do. She puts on a smile, she changes her tone of voice, and she's premeditating what she's doing before she's posting it, because she has it in her head already that this is going to look good on social media, so this is going to give me high ratings. I feel like she has internalized public observation. The pressure comes from knowing she is constantly visible and always being aware of her surroundings. The scene demonstrates how surveillance affects behavior before anyone even gives a rating. Now I will be talking about source number two. On a side note, this is one of my favorite scenes from the episode Nosedive, because this scene you could just see the breakdown of her and just her trying to hold so tightly on to that image that she worked so hard for. But then you see it deteriorating each sentence that comes out of her mouth. So, my source number 2 is going to be about social performance and identity. The name of my source is Addictive Social Media Use by Belaveskia, if I'm pronouncing her name right. So, this source deepened my interpretation of Nosedive because it mainly focused on performative identity and self-presentation. This research argues that social media culture encourages people to create carefully curated versions of themselves in order to gain approval from others. I believe that this idea helped me better, not only to understand, but to get a better grasp at the wedding scene in this episode. In this scene, we see, Lacey constantly rehearsing her speech, practicing her smile, and she's trying to pick out certain words that will make her sentence pop. Because she feels like, oh, if I say this, then they'll just dive right in like, wow, that was amazing. But as we know, as the ending, it did not turn out like that. In this scene, she carefully chooses the right tone because her personality has become something she performs rather than something that's natural, almost like a robot. Her behavior is very and overly polished because she is trying to maintain a socially acceptable image at all times. And with that being said, this research helped me a lot to realize that this episode is not only criticizing social media addiction, but also showing how surveillance culture turns identity itself into a performance. And I believe that this is very true in the real world as we see it. But I'll be getting on that later on in my presentation. So guys, this is my last but not least source of this presentation. Source number 3. In this source, I will be talking about social exclusion as control. The title of my source is No Likes, No Control by Rich. So, in this source, I feel like it mostly focused on digital ostracism and social exclusion. This research communicates that rejection in digital spaces can damage a person's self-esteem. Not only that, but their sense of belonging and their self-worth. When that becomes erupted, it is because social acceptance becomes closely connected to identity. Meaning, a person feels like the only way for them to be seen, or for the only way for them to find themselves, is through social acceptance. They have to go to the world to be accepted. They have to feel the need to, oh, I want to be liked, so I should do this to fit in with other people, which I do not agree with. But my source dives right into that. This source helped me better understand the wedding scene in Nosedive. Because when you first watch it, you're like, wow. But when you have an context behind it, then you have a better comprehension to what's really going on. In the scene, once Lacey's rating drops, people immediately begin treating her differently. Almost as if she has lost her value as a person. Instead of showing empathy to somebody they see having a mental breakdown in real time, her guests view her as embarrassing, socially undesirable, and probably just annoying. This episode suggested that when society becomes obsessed with public reputation, people begin prioritizing their image over compassion, as we can see in this scene. This scene and this research helped me realize that the rating system in Nosedive is not only terrible, detrimental, and negative, but it does not only control behavior, it also changes the way people view and treat each other, as we can see in this, and it is very awful. So, we are on our last slide, guys. This is my conclusion of my whole presentation. In this slide, my last slide, I'll be discussing and just summarizing what I took from this episode and my sources. So, overall, to me, my research really gave me a better insight into helping me comprehend Nosedive, that it is much more than social media addiction. The episode explores how surveillance culture happens, how surveillance culture abrupts, also the constant public evaluation that comes with shaping someone's identity, emotional behavior, and just how human relationships spawn. Through these concepts like performative identity and digital ostracism, I realized that the characters are constantly pressured to present socially acceptable versions of themselves instead of behaving normally. Even though the world of Nosedive is fake, it is very realistic in many aspects. In some of the aspects of the episode, you can see how modern social media culture is reflected, and people don't often feel comfortable to be their true selves because they feel like they're automatically going to be judged because it's not the ideal or the ideal image of a person that has in this case and in this society, a person that has a 4-star rating. In this episode, we could see that people often feel pressure to change and perform a perfect online identity for validation and approval. But mostly, this episode ultimately warns that when human image becomes more important than humanity, genuine connection and individuality begin to disappear. And I find that to be very sad. And in my opinion, this relates to the real world where we see it on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, where people will have to appear perfect. And the people that come online as themselves. They are seen as, oh, weird, or why do you look like that, or why can't you be like this person? Which pushes the people that want to show their true identities into a box. But that's my presentation, guys. Thank you for watching.